Hello, friends. This is Mac Payne, founder, owner, and operator of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast, where we tell the world about the Vietnam War and the brave veterans who served there, as told to you by yours truly, a Vietnam veteran. In this video, I have some very exciting news for you. I have just published a new podcast episode about none other than the inspiration for Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore in the famous Vietnam War movie Apocalypse Now. I am sure most remember that memorable line uttered by the great actor, Mr. Robert Duvall, who sadly has recently passed away. Probably all Vietnam veterans remember the line in that movie where he said, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning." That was too cool for school. Duvall was playing the character who was the squadron commander for the 1st of the 9th Cav, one of the most notable units in Vietnam. If you remember the movie, he did some unusual things. But it seems like most all Cav squadron commanders in Vietnam did crazy things. But apparently, Colonel Kilgore in this movie did lots of crazy things. Recently, I discovered the inspiration for that character. That's right. Someone in the Army did things that inspired the writers to write those lines for Robert Duvall to say in the movie. In the podcast episode I just put on the air not too long ago, I cover a story that appeared on the Guardian website from over there across the waters in British company where the royals are being arrested. The story in the Guardian talked about a colonel who actually did command 1st of the 9th Cav at the Battle of Ia Drang. That was the first big battle in the Vietnam War back in 1965, not too far from Pleiku, one of my favorite places in Vietnam, way up in the mountains. On this podcast episode, I share that story with you to tell about the individual who was the inspiration for Colonel Kilgore in the movie. The inspiration was a Lieutenant Colonel John B. Stockton, who actually commanded the 1st of the 9th in that battle at the Ia Drang Valley. Unfortunately, he did something in that battle that got him relieved from command. And to me, I think it was not justified. What he did was disobey orders to save some troops who were in dire circumstances in that battle. That sounds like something Colonel Kilgore would do, and his namesake, Colonel Stockton. You have got to listen to this episode. It tells the whole story, and it is fascinating to learn really how all this started. I've made it easy for you. You don't have to go on the internet and search out that podcast and search out that episode. No, all you've got to do is to go down below this 1965 vintage Philco TV set and click on the link to the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. It'll take you straight to the podcast and straight to that episode where you can find out how Lieutenant Colonel Stockton influenced the movie makers that made Apocalypse Now. When you go down there, you'll probably notice another link right above the one that takes you over to the podcast website. That one is Buy Me a Coffee. Again, that is a bald-faced request for you to assist this podcast by buying me a coffee. If you buy me a cup of coffee, that means you'll be donating $5 to this podcast. It would come in real handy. The podcast host people really like it when I send them money every month. Otherwise, they may shut it down. And I'm not going to let that happen. So please give me a hand. I'd greatly appreciate it. But the big thing I want you to do is go down there and click on the site that'll take you over to the podcast so you can listen to episode 3209 of the podcast and find out about the actual person who was the inspiration for that crazy Colonel Kilgore in Apocalypse Now. If you enjoyed the movie, I'm sure you will enjoy hearing this story about something that affected the movie. In my opinion, I think that was a highlight of the movie, where he says, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning." Sounded like a true Cav squadron commander. They were all sort of like that. A little, but they would do crazy things. And those jobs, they sort of had to do crazy things. They were a bunch of outstanding, brave people, and I'm glad they were on our side. So do me a favor. Go over and listen to the podcast episode. Matter of fact, I'm trying to keep a record. If you are willing to go over to the podcast episode and listen to the story about the inspiration for Colonel Kilgore in Apocalypse Now, raise your hand so I can count them. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. Oh yeah, that's good. So please, seriously, go over and listen to it and stay tuned to the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. I've been doing this podcast for 12 years and I intend on doing it, maybe, who knows, for another 12 years. So please keep watching. I'd greatly appreciate it. This is Mac Payne closing out this video where I encourage you to go over to the podcast website and listen to the story of Colonel Kilgore in Apocalypse Now. I'll guarantee you'll be glad that you did when you do it, which I'm sure you are. So please go on over and check it out. And again, thank you for listening. We'll talk soon.